So hello, hopefully we are live. First, I would like to apologize because, as you probably found out, sometimes the stream didn't start at conferences. So what I do, actually forgot to show you this. Wait a sec. Meetup.com hacks. So there are some past shows, and I just didn't start it, or I couldn't start the stream. And right now, I found the issue. This was a broken Ethernet cable, which hopefully it will work the hour here, and then I will replace it. So sorry for that. So I think the very last session, I just couldn't start the stream, and I wondered why. I tried to pick a secondary YouTube server, but it didn't work. So now I hope it is working right now. So, but now, before we actually start with the questions, of course, welcome to EHEX, the 93rd EHEX TV, the last this year. So before we start with the actual questions, I would like to show you a real use case of eventual consistency. And so watch this. This is my recent video from Sunday, so it is maybe even interesting for you. And I have 0 likes, but I already had 19. And I was curious why is the case. So it was, so I will refresh it right now. I'm curious. So now there are 15 likes, right? So you see here. But if I go to my channel content, I see this is actually, I'm logged in. As you can see, there are 19 likes and 19 seen. By the way, thank you for the likes. I really appreciate it. So I'm just happy about likes. But there are 19 likes, and let's see if I reload this. So there are now 19 still, and this varies between 15 and 0. And let's see. So now I have 15, which is a pity. The entire day there were 0 likes. What I'm curious, if you go to the last video from my YouTube channel, how many likes do you see right now? Because it seems like this is a YouTube problem. I already thought, YouTube don't like me because I don't have any ads on my channel, and maybe this is the issue. So I'm really curious if you can, go to the chat and just tell how many likes do you actually see. Okay. So now, so you see, beautiful face, right? So we covered that, eventual consistency, and thank you for the likes, and we can actually close that. Okay, now back to the show. So maybe because it's already opened, what I did, I get at conferences, constant questions, what to do to make Quarkus MicroProfile capable. And I think the easiest is just, put these dependencies. And I just, created a small gist. It is not even a GitHub project. It's just a gist 4 days ago. So you can copy and paste the dependencies and you get more or less full profile on Quarkus. The next one are podcasts, and there are a couple of them. Interesting one. And so Zoran Severac, also a NetBeans guy, we had a nice conversation about AI with Java, and the next one would be just about AI in Java. And by the way, check out his Neurov and this DeepNets. Exactly, DeepNets is his project. I took a look at the DeepNets, and it looks the source code. The API, how you can use the deep learning looks really nice. So you can just make some ads for him. So if you check out, watch the video, and what you also can do, you can go to somewhere, learn, and getting started, and take a look at the source code. So it's really modern Java source code. It looks like builder pattern, and so you have only 2 dependencies, which is nice. And this is the source code for AI. And maybe over sometimes during Christmas, maybe I will play with it a little bit. It looks nice. So if you're interested in image recognition and AI, just check out the source code, DeepNets. Now free ad to Zoran. Okay, so we covered that. Now, AX Live is around the corner. I'm already thinking, how to pack the entire material into one day. but the next, we have a very few seats. I think at most 5, better 3. So there's already sufficient registration. So if you really like to register, ping me. But in the first show, it's all about serverless, but there was not enough room for serverless. So it's serverless CI/CD, observability, resiliency on AWS Cloud. So in the first workshop we will cover, we'll deploy, Java microservices and see how to monitor, debug, and deploy them. And the next will be like mild Fargate, ECS. Maybe we'll just mention Kubernetes, but and AWS Lambda also would like to explain in depth. AWS Lambda, and what I plan around March, April, a show or an AirHacks Live just about Lambda. This is enough material to cover. Now the question is, why this show is also packed with AWS questions. Why I'm speaking a little bit more about clouds? Because I got lots of project requests, and what I found are true use cases where there was a true benefit to move from on-premise to cloud. And interestingly, there were different. So in one project, no true benefit. In one project, we had to, because this was the idea of management, so there was no true logical explanation. But in other projects, this was security and scalability. It means or scalability. Their own data center was too small, so they had to go to the cloud. In the first one was high security or requirements, and the last project was actually HA and disaster recovery. And these were the reasons why we had to go to the clouds. What I only said is, if we go to the cloud, we go really to the cloud. So forget about just my lift and shift. We will really rethink the architecture and try to build something which is working. And this is why I have some content, some extracted content. Exactly. Okay. Now, any questions? Hello. 15 likes. Okay, there are 15 likes. But what's interests me, you can also tell me this tomorrow. Sometimes I see 0 likes. So today there were 0 likes. I was afraid, so what's going on? Is an error in my screencast or whatever? And then there were 15 likes, and I see 19 likes in my account and 15 right now. But 1 hour before the show, there were just 0 likes. And just if you know, I'm not able to deleting the likes. It just happens on YouTube, and we call it eventual consistency or CAP theorem, right? So, okay, thank you for the feedback. And yeah, now we covered this. This was the ad. And now start with the questions. I got a question after a conference session that was dev talks. And by the way, there was a nice, I also forgot about that, DevFlix, Adam Bean. Hopefully I will find that. You see the title? Hey, enterprise EJB developers, now it's the time to learn Lambda or something. So I delivered, actually what I did, I picked old specs from EJBs and explained with old EJB materials AWS Lambda. It was a lot of fun. So actually the session was planned for 1 hour, and we discussed it for 1.5 hours. I really enjoyed that, and this is how I got the idea next year, one day, about AWS Lambda. And by the way, after the show, AWS pinged me actually, and watched next week I will publish a podcast with an AWS serverless solution architect where we chat about Lambda and Java. Okay, now this was that. We have to be a little bit more structured during the show. So let's see where the questions are. I always lose the questions. So what are the limitations Java CDK? So what is the CDK Cloud Development Kit? Well, so as you already know, we had to go to the cloud, right? And you can use scripts, you can automate everything with Terraform, or if you probably know me, so this is the show number 93rd. So what I'd like to do is, back then there was Java belonged to Sun. For me, it was okay, whatever Sun does is part of a standard, let's say. So if I go to AWS, I try to use as much as possible AWS. And if I go to Azure, I also have a Vue project on Azure. So then we use whatever possible on Azure. Why not? I mean, we are already, why to decouple from the added value, right? So on an AWS, you can use CloudFormation. So this is actually the question about, but there was no more time to answer the question during the conference. So in CloudFormation is actually similar to Terraform. The syntax is not as nice. You can use JSON or YAML, and you can declaratively actually describe what should happen, and then you submit the Terraform declaration to the cloud, and the cloud reads the declaration and tries, to sync the state. So this is Terraform. Now, the question is, why Terraform? What's the advantage of Terraform? The advantage is the entire state is already in the cloud. So you can work in a team, and this is the entire stack is stored in a bucket and called stack. This is the state. So because I'm Java developer, I like Java. So there is a CDK Cloud Development Kit, and what is about? It is like a Java object structure which generates behind the scenes CloudFormation and is officially supported by AWS. And now nothing special with it except you can use Maven. So, and now, long story short, if you use Maven, what you can do, you can create small Java projects and submit them to Nexus. It makes the entire cloud story reusable and highly effective. So this is why I like CDK. Now, the question Alexander asked me, what's the difference between, what are the limitations of CDK comparing to CloudFormation? So I had to explain it a little bit more. And the answer is CloudFormation, CDK uses CloudFormation. So what can happen is that CloudFormation in one point of time has a little bit more functionality than CDK, but CDK always catches up. So this is exactly the same. Like I will ask what are the limitations? Not exactly the same. Like the relation between JPA or JDBC or maybe JPA on Hibernate, something like this. Not even. So CloudFormation is just the JSON, and the Java objects are serialized into the JSON, right? Exactly. So yeah, perfect. So I think the first question, Alexander from DevTalks, hopefully you are listening right now, and if yes, your question is answered. Now Jeff Rogers from this is what is it, Snow Leopard, maybe. I've been following your talks. Thank you. DevOps and even MicroStream. So MicroStream was fun on running serverless with AWS Lambda and Java. You mentioned in a recent talk that a monolith with 25 to 50 classes could be deployed as a Lambda. How would a JAX-RS application with multiple resource classes boundaries be configured, deployed as a single Lambda? So your name is Jeff, which is perfect. You know why? I don't know whether you're aware of the serverless. Many developers hate the term serverless. I also don't like it because it's misleading. What I like about serverless, what it actually means is a business term. What it actually means, you don't have to care about servers. But because serverless was the problem, there was a JeffConf somewhere. So because they say, okay, we can call serverless whatever, and we call it just Jeff. There was JeffConf. So you are the most famous serverless developer. But what I would like to show you is I would like to create now a Lambda and explain you that you can have as many classes as you like. So what this is actually the project where I ask you about the the likes and come back here to my GitHub account. It should be where is it? Here. This is the project. So whatever I do right now, you can just clone the repository and I extend it a little bit. And it should work like here. But I will explain you behind the scenes that it's actually there are no limits, or explain you behind the scenes. I explain you what happens behind the scenes. So this is the CDK project, what I mentioned earlier, and nothing happens here. And actually, I could start the deployment because it will take a while. So I go to Jeff and say build and deploy, don't ask, which is always great. And hopefully I'm deploying to the right account. Okay, so now, so what this is this CDK stack, but it looks like this, and it comes from Amazon. You just write, proper Java code. So what means here, I'm deploying something with 512 megs of RAM. But the most interesting part is this one. So if you take a look here, we have here Lambda handler, iOS Quarkus Amazon Lambda runtime Quarkus stream handler request. It means there is single function, and this function is always called by AWS. And when it's called, when HTTP event happens. And this HTTP event is created by Lambda REST API gateway. And this Lambda REST API gateway receives our HTTP request, converts them in HTTP events, and passes the events to Quarkus. And Quarkus invokes now let's show you how this looks like. Quarkus invokes JAX-RS, and I just created a small MicroProfile application with injected greeter. But the point is, you can have as many resources as you like. You could deploy 100 JAX-RS resources. There is no limits, and you can have whatever because Quarkus does the dispatching. So the answer is, you could actually pack as many classes as you like in an AWS Lambda, and it will still work. And I would even consider this in some cases as a best practice. So now why Lambda should be small? Because Java is crazy fast and optimizes everything. So even a few hundred classes could be executed in a few milliseconds. I don't see any problem with that. Okay, I hope this is crystal clear. So long story short, there is one function registered in the AWS Lambda runtime, and this function is always called on HTTP event. There are no limits for the path or methods on the HTTP events, and you can have as many functions or as many JAX-RS resources as you like. Okay, now let's see whether Jeff is already deployed. This is my account. And here we have our function. And if we go here, so I should be able to invoke this right now, hello. And now it takes 5 seconds because it's cold start. The very first one is the cold one. And then if I do this, you see invoked, invoked, invoked. This is now the performance of MicroProfile applications running in serverless mode. And the cold starts are actually pretty rare. Okay, so now you saw real, if you like, you can call it. I will just deinstall it after the show. But yeah, and this is, I would say, a live deployment of Lambda, and I explain how the dispatching is working. Okay, nice. Let's see. So we covered this, so I can close this, and this is also covered. And next question. I hope Jeff is happy. Now, very nice question from, my name is Nano. So Nano, perfect question. Now, you ask me, what's the difference between Singleton, Stateless, application scoped? And actually, your question is not complete because we have 2 Singletons. We have the Rod Johnson Singleton and EJB Singleton. Why Rod Johnson Singleton? So the problem is, I mentioned it several times on the show, but there was an old spec in 2009 called JSR 330 Dependency Injection for Java. And the long story short was, I think in summer 2009, Java EE6 was released, and the entire dependency injection of Java EE6 was based on JBoss theme. So we had annotations like in, injection, out, we had outjection, and crazy enough, we had bijection. But Rod Johnson, in the shortest amount of time, and Mr. Rod Johnson from Spring Source decided to create a standard called dependency injection for Java at Inject. And he published this standard, and it became a standard. This was very fast. I don't know how he did it, but it was like from July to October, everything was already done. There's no spec, no PDF, just Javadoc. So, and then the Java 6 people look at that and say, okay, we have to do something about that because we have already now a dependency injection for Java standard. And they picked this and removed this injection, outjection, and bijection, which is probably even good thing. And now we got the Spring injection in Java E. So this add injects comes from Spring. But this add inject also came with Singleton. This is your first Singleton. So there's not only add inject, there was add inject produces Singleton, and there are like 5 annotations, right? So, and this add Java X inject Singleton from here is the simplest possible Singleton. And it's very similar to application scoped Singleton. Okay, we covered the first Singleton. What we also have, we have the javax.ejb.Singleton. And it looks the same, different package. The EJB singleton is a singleton with superpowers. So this singleton starts transaction, is able to perform schedules, and it locks. So there can be only one thread at a time which accesses this EJB. Very similar to Lambda. If you have Lambda, AWS Lambda with throttling 1, it behaves exactly the same as a singleton. Now, almost exactly the same, like no, exactly the same. A singleton in one JVM. So an application scoped is like, the simple singleton without the limitations. There is no transaction. It's just singleton as a scope. So if you are not sure, so now the question what to do about it, right? So we covered all the crazy singletons. So we have a singleton, application scoped, EJB singleton, and now stateless. And there are hey Nano, you see what you did? There are actually different users. One is called Stateless, Nicholas Lee from New Zealand, and the other one is called Singleton. Nice. Yeah, and that's me. But if you are not sure, just use application scoped. And stateless I like the most because it comes with additional benefits. So what you can do with stateless, you can do something with stateless what you cannot do with singleton. And this is very useful in some projects. For instance, in stateless, you can say max pool size 5, and you will never get more than 5 concurrent transactions. What you can also do, you can send min pool size 5, and what you get, something similar to Lambda's provisioned concurrency, means if the server starts, there are already 5 warm beans. Now no one cares anymore about warming up beans because the technology is fast enough. But what you can do with it is the following. I had a problem with GraalVM and JavaScript environment. So if you JavaScript is not thread safe, the only one thread at a time can access the JavaScript context. So with EJBs, it will work because every EJB in post construct would create a GraalVM context. You got 5 EJBs, 5 concurrent transactions, 5 GraalVM contexts, and it will work out of the box. Such a thing is impossible or very hard. No, impossible. It is possible but you will have to build it manually with application scoped or singleton beans. So this is the killer use case for EJBs. No one cares anymore because I think next year or a year later, EJBs are going to be removed and replaced by CDI. So if you can use application scoped or request scoped. So at stateless, what I'm doing in migration projects, we are replacing at stateless with request scoped transactional. I hope I answered all your questions. Nano. Should be. So Nano again. So also great questions. So Nano, your questions are perfect. So entity manager producer, which produces something, and because of testability. I don't do this. What I do is I inject entity manager with at persistence context. And I just whatever I'm injecting, I don't use private anymore for fields usually. So if I'm injecting whatever I'm injecting is package private, it's easier to test, and yeah, I mean no one cares right about private anymore. Of course, you have to be careful, right? What I'm doing, I spend my time on the server. So if you're building, something in a singleton client or Swing app, then private makes sense because it's really hard. You have to protect the state more. On the server, everything comes and goes per request. So this is not not a problem usually. But and you're asking me what is about thread safe and entity manager? Entity manager. Think about this. Entity manager is transactional. What it means is it waits until transaction commits and then flushes its state with the underlying database. What is the state? It's a hash map, unit of work inside the entity manager. The problem is if you have 2 threads accessing the hash map at the same time, then it can become inconsistent. That's the problem. It's not like the database becomes inconsistent. The internal state of the entity manager can become inconsistent. So if you're flushing the entity manager with a database, you could flush inconsistent state. With EJBs, it cannot happen because every EJB gets injected an instance of the entity manager. With application scoped, also cannot happen. Or what can happen is because it will dispatch between the entity manager instances usually, but if you would keep the entity manager in a static field, this could be problematic, for instance, right? Okay. I hope I answered your questions. Back to Jeff. And Jeff had some problem with my template. So Jeff, thank you for testing. I think the problem was the following. What I didn't mention so far is I always use a preview release candidate of the template. I use CDKv2 before it was released. Why? Because the CDKv2 it looked like Java E. It only shipped with 2 dependencies. In CDKv1, there was 1 dependency for a service. It was highly modular, but for me not usable. I really hated that. But with JDK v2, it is nice. But reInvent was last week, and they released v2, and we are using v2. I bootstrapped the environment again, and I didn't have to do this. So, or I did it and forgot it. Is the question, because I rebootstrapped the environment today again, and it worked. But Jeff, thank you. The question is, I don't know how to test it, because maybe I will create a new account and test whether it's still required. But the message to all of you is CDKv2 is out. Now, Mr. Alip TTB. What's your approach to development test production staging when it comes to persistence XML? So there is an action schema generation database action is set to drop and create action. What I do, drop and create action, and there is one setting, do it in a file. This is my way of doing this. So what happens then? Hibernate or Eclipse Link will generate the DDLs to a file, and I look at the file, review the file, create a Liquibase or a FlyawayDB schema, and then use it as a template, as a simplifier. And in the early stages of the project, I just let JPA generate everything. And in a startup project, they implemented this 1 year long, just used the Hibernate migration back and forth, and it worked good enough. But in one point of time, you will have to do it manually. Now, Mr. Dimitri, I think, right? Abkhazi from Moscow. And by the way, I was in a conference in Moscow, it was called JRush. I think this, so I announced it also on meetup.com. The problem with that is, I was invited to the conference, and they gave me the Moscow time. And the conference was announced with PT, which is Pacific time. And I thought, okay, PT, okay, strange, maybe they know this is like Moscow time. But to my knowledge, this PC Pacific time is exactly the same as the Moscow time. But Moscow time is AM, I think, and PT is PM or something like this. And we, with the CET, are, I think, 2 hours behind. So at the end, I was completely confused. I didn't know anymore, when the show starts. And the show was delayed. So, and then I was completely lost. So, but yeah, this was last week. The name of the actually great conference was called JRush. It was lots of fun. Exactly. So, but back to the show. So, one container, one process approach. So, Dimitri, you are really nice because you read my blog posts from when 2013. And just, asking, it's like, how to call it, softball question, right? So you read my content and say, okay, I'm curious whether Adam will remember what he wrote, 9 years ago. But what I always wondered, why not to do it? So I always did it for at least, since 2013 or even longer. I always had one container per process, or one JVM, one application server, one WAR. Right now, I have one JVM, one Quarkus, and inside is a jar. Or in application server projects, there's one application server per WAR. It works excellent. So I don't see the point to have shared deployments. Okay. Very good. Is this good for Java applications? It's excellent. And Java applications are absolutely cloud native. And actually, why I do everything Java in the clouds is because Java is much faster than all scripting languages, and you can save money. And if you can save money, you can do Java. So managers love it. So Mr. Dimitri, again, the MicroProfile fault tolerance API will allow us to limit the number of concurrent calls to our business method. Exactly. And with asynchronous, you get even a thread pool. Is it possible to use the same annotation for the MicroProfile REST client method in interface definition? Yes. At least I did it on Quarkus and it worked. It should work everywhere. Dimitri also asked me, Graviton and Ampere. Graviton 3 was announced at reInvent, and at Graviton 2 I'm already using in production. And what's also possible is, since last week, you can use Graviton on ECS Fargate, which is like the pragmatic version of Kubernetes. And pragmatic means simpler and cheaper. And what you can do is, Kubernetes, AKS, Elastic Kubernetes Service, is another service from Amazon. And Ampere is interesting. So it seems like you can buy Ampere processors, which is really interesting because I will have to look how much they cost, because I would really like to have it on my server, actually. I always like to be, but I guess it is not going to be cheap. But Ampere, and I use Graviton actually in production already. On one of my instances on EC2, I use Graviton. And even there also a blog post, a screencast, of course, with inconsistent amount of likes, but it was like Helidon or Graviton. So I just don't know, because it rhymes. I shipped the Helidon microservice framework from Oracle and launched that on Graviton just for fun. And Graviton is ARM based. So what you can do is you can use Docker and create with the build X option. You can create you can target ARM processors from your machine and create Docker containers and run it on ECS. Or on bare metal, you can just start Quarkus, because there is a Corretto JVM which runs on ARM. So perfect. So I no idea whether you can save money with Ampere, but you can absolutely save money with Graviton in comparing to Intel. Now, Mr. Franden, and I know Dennis, I know him. I think he was one of the ATD AHEX TV attendee. And you see, DevLeak session. Hey, Enterprise, now is the time, because I can get this topic serverless computing out of my head. So it wasn't the intention, but thank you. I've already migrated parts of my modular monolith, Jakarta EA, perfect, to Quarkus as a part of POC and tried it as a Azure function. It was very exciting and interesting. Yes, the difference is what I showed you right now. I used on AWS, you are using a Quarkus extension, and on Azure Functions, you probably use the Microsoft plugin, Maven plugin, a very similar story. What I do, just to Dennis, what I do on Azure, there's a difference to AWS. On Azure, I create the infrastructure up front, and if you launch the plugin, it will reuse the already existing infrastructure. Otherwise, your Maven plugin will create everything, right? This is like, IaC on steroids. Are we certain if it's realistic to migrate a modular monolith completely to serverless? Do you have any experience with such project? Yes, you can absolutely do this. There are no limitations. The only problem, of course, is, so what's the main difference between stateless and Lambdas? The main difference is Lambdas are starting and stopping the entire process, right? EJBs, they were started and stopped inside JVM. So if you had static, the static was available to other instances of EJBs. If you have static on Lambda, the static is not visible to other Lambdas or Azure functions, but it is still reused because the container freezes, starts, and it's faster, right? This is the difference. So if you are migrating your monolith to serverless, what you should think about is, of course, if you have, startup in post-construct, this won't work. Your singletons won't work as suspected. Caching, forget about caching. I mean, you can cache something, but you won't cache. Your static cache won't be available to other Lambdas or Azure functions. If you know about that, I don't see the limits. And by the way, I don't know whether you talk about this in the DevFlix session, but I definitely talk about this in one of the recent sessions. The major advantage of Java is we have huge experience with large systems. And if you think about TypeScript, why TypeScript was invented by Microsoft is because Microsoft wanted to have a solution for large applications in JavaScript for web. And they wrote something which is similar to C# or Java and called it TypeScript, where you can build larger systems. So with Java, we can build larger systems, of course. So we can absolutely pack more code to a Lambda, and the Lambda will still remain maintainable. So this is the huge advantage of Java. And as you watched probably my last, go to YouTube and like it. Let's see what happens. And like the screencast. But what you will see is how fast Java really is. And the last, myth of Java and memory. This is what I always hated the entire cloud native discussion. In cloud, the CPU is bound to memory. The more memory you give the functions, the more CPU you get. So actually, sometimes you have to dedicate more CPU to, or if you put more RAM to a Lambda function, you can even save costs up to a point. So this is a fact. So what it means is I never had a problem to choose, to optimize, and don't even have the problem, to migrate to GraalVM. I always used JVM, and it was fast enough or faster than the competition. Okay. Thank you, Dennis, for watching the show. And now I would like, exactly, can you possibly show an example how the orchestration of such serverless architecture in production can look like? Communication. Oh, we are going to doing this next week. So I'm working right now, I'm trying to create a simple example with CDK pipeline for next week. Oh, for this week, sorry, for this week. And to show you, the infrastructure as code in a pipeline, and also canary deployments and stuff like that. So I plan actually to show this on Thursday during the workshop. And if you don't make to the workshop, or maybe you're already attending, then next year in March, you can ask me this, or next IaC TV show. But I won't manage, to show you everything in. But zero downtime is normal in Lambda. Wow, we have lots of questions in the chat, which is great. So let's see here. Okay, this is not us. Also nothing in Twitter, lazy Twitter. Now, Pedro asked me, when we have two applications sharing the same database, how we can do to have the same data that is data, its last start in both, even if one updates the data in database. What you are asking, you have two databases, two copies of the data, and you cannot have, this is CAP theorem. I mean, you're asking me if you have two, buckets of data, how to sync the data, right? This is the question. And you can only, you can only lock the databases which won't scale, or you do it asynchronously, and then it scales but is not consistent. Except you have something like Google Spanner, great database, and Google Spanner is able to log all databases in milliseconds, and it is crazy fast, and it still is working. So Google Spanner could do this. Peter, I think you're asking me, right? Now, two applications sharing the same database. Its last start in both applications. Okay, if you have two applications in one database, so you have to introduce locking, and there is an optimistic lock and pessimistic lock. This is the only thing to go. And optimistic lock means if you two applications update the same table, one will win and the other one will lose. And the pessimistic locks means the one will update and lock, or lock and update, and the other will have to wait until the first updated, which may result in deadlocks. Okay, Casper says DBA would kill me if generated tables. Yeah, the DBAs, sometimes they are very aggressive. So I also had this in projects, but over time, they if you have to be nice to them and buy some coffee, and then everything's okay. Costa Rica, Adam, cool, another Adam, and oh, perfect. Thank you for following me live. What are the most crucial steps to successfully split a really big monolith into microservices? Is a viable way to do step by step? If yes, how could such steps look like? So the first thing is to understand the business logic. And what I will do is I will just remove all the dependencies, all the unnecessary stuff, just delete as much code as possible without touching the business logic, like mappers, DAOs, DTOs, all the stuff. And maybe you're happy with monolith then. So this is actually, I like monolith. And even in Lambdas, I try to create as large Lambdas as possible, and still works great. What is your preferred approach for frontends in microservice architecture, softballs, web components? And if you go to my GitHub account, and by the way, this is one of my recent projects. So GitHub is called BC Design. So take a look at this project. I'm using it right now in a production project. Okay, perfect. Oh, I have a Node.js Express API. I mean, yeah, no problem. That also serves webmy pages. I would like to build a frontend with native web components. Is this feasible, or do I still need helper libraries like lit or stencil? What I'm using lit HTML. This is absolutely almost a must. So search for the BC design and never use stencil, so you don't have to use it. And Node.js and Express actually doesn't matter. Perfect. I would say thank you for watching, and see you on Thursday, EAX Live, and then next year. And I'm really glad that we have some live users, and check, watch the likes. This is really fascinating that from 1 minute to another, I have 0 likes and then come back to 19. So it's actually crazy. And by the way, maybe I also mentioned this story. So I got a notice from YouTube that the screencasts about Jakarta MVC was classified as explicit. And I took a look at this, and this was like, a sentence like a model was exposed directly to a Pojo, which is maybe explicit. And now you can watch the video about Jakarta Model View Controller if you are 18 years old. So this was the first indication of eventual consistency. And now I'm losing from 1 second to another, all my likes, but they're coming back. So yeah. So maybe YouTube should watch EAX TV, and then they will learn about, blocking. So just kidding. Okay, thank you, and see you next year. Bye.